I'll start with this one. It's a piece of copper plate that's been mounted over a piece of heavy plywood. And again, the wood is found very crude. The copper plate took me about 3 hours to sculpt. And when you look at this closely, you'll see a tiny little English landscape horizon line running along the bottom. But again, apparently, it looks like the metal's been ripped. It looks like the whole thing's just been torn. It looks like an accidental mark. But when you actually look at that mark, I've carefully followed a tree and a building and a little telegraph pole and all the sort of detailing that goes on in a classic English landscape. So again, this hovers between worlds about being uncontrived, accidental, found, and then controlled. And then once you spot the bit of control, suddenly that starts becoming cloud patterns. Those become rushes or reeds or grasses, and the whole thing becomes figurative and starts having pictorial references. So it's that little crossover point that I'm excited by, really. Similarly with this one, again it's titled some sort of head form. So again, what apparently is a very sort of coarse, crudely made object actually has sort of 2 eyes. And as soon as you start spotting a face in it, you can't stop spotting a face in it. Same with this one too. So again, it's that sort of borderline crossing thing. I have loads of things to say about those, but my throat's going, and I think you'll probably have had enough. So, is there anything else I should tell you about that? It's just because they're in the context of an art gallery. I suppose that's what's interesting. So it's where pictures normally hang. So when you look at something like that, you expect to find a picture, and these things don't immediately give you a picture. That one doesn't give you a picture at all. It's just raw, crude materials. I did bury a picture in that. There's a silly head in this. This is a nose, this is an eye, and this is a smiley mouth. So, but again, I don't expect people to see that necessarily. Again, it's a very crudely made. All the bits are out the scraps bin at the college I teach at. Someone else used these bits of perspex for something, I have no idea what. This is an old lino cutting block for one of the students slung in the bin. So the whole thing is found, all the pieces of wood are scrapped and thrown away. And I've just I've done a repeat thing on it, which as soon as you start repeating things like any sort of pattern, you start giving control and you imply something else going on in there.
How long does it take to make this?
Sometimes really quick, and sometimes a long time. I mean, sourcing the materials and just going through the bins and picking out all the bits took quite a while. But the actual making, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I liked the way the perspex gives you almost like a microscope view of the plant material. It's wild clematis, old man's beard. So again, it's very English and sort of, it's traditional in a way. It has all the sort of traditional resonances. But what I've done is stuck it underneath builder's mastic, clear builder's mastic with perspex. So it's been compressed and sort of uglified in a way and trapped. And in fact, this one too is about nature being compressed and trapped and treated badly by humans, I suppose. So it does have formal elements, but it does have a sort of subject that's going on in there as well. I was really pleased when Jackie, who looks after this room for PM, came in and, because I hope you don't mind me telling people this, but she's only been in this job for a week and a half, and she pointed at the thing on the wall up there and said, well, we're going to have to get that sorted out. And that was another one of my little tricks. And obviously you can see what's going on there. It's pretending to be part of the wiring system that's been ripped out. And I mean, it's almost a little bit too overt, I think. I'm thinking maybe I should have painted it white. But I quite like it for that all the same. And obviously when I came in and looked at this space, I looked at the cabling and the boxing. And I'm really interested in things like that in gallery spaces, because that's not what you're supposed to see. So I always think they're the most interesting things in gallery spaces, the bits that you paint it white so that it's supposed to sort of disappear, and it never does quite disappear. So I'm playing on that idea of these accidental gallery cables by putting one of mine in there alongside it. And this is, yes, this is, you can't tell? Right, good. Well, hopefully they don't sort of scream too loudly. This is an old TV cable, which I cut and then pulled out the copper thread and wrapped it around a little black the black cable, and then cut and repeated and repeated and repeated, and I did it all those times. So each one of these loops is a little bit of handcrafting, which again, the sort of history of handcrafting objects is to do with maybe next door's architecture or normal craft objects. But I wanted to apply those handcraft skills to something very contemporary, like a TV cable. And this one I got in a place called Wrap in Watford. I don't know if you ever know it, but it's just a scrap recycling place, so it's a freebie. And I've just made it into something decorative. So instead of it functioning as a TV cable, it now functions as a piece of architectural decoration. And it still functions electrically too, because there's a battery down there, and there's a light up there. And I couldn't believe that after all that mistreatment and all my manipulating of that wire, it still took electricity through both cables, and it would still function as a TV cable. So I found that very interesting. That something can be sort of pretty because it's repeated, because it's patterny, and yet still carry out what it's designed to do, which is conduct electrical signals. And also I liked it because it was against the gallery blue light, and that isn't light. That's actually a movement detector, which is a part of the alarm system. Is that what that blue light? Yeah. So I think it picks up movement, and it's about an alarm system. And I really like my thing competing with it. I thought that was quite funny. Little juxtaposition. Where does the work stop? But a lot of it is about where does the work stop and where does the gallery start, and hopefully you can't tell. I forgot to point out the pieces of paint on the floor just underneath the brown tape there, which I had to replace this morning because the cleaners swept them up. But I put those. So again, that's playing with the boundary again between what galleries shouldn't have, i.e. paint on the floor, and what artists place there as tricks.
Guys, presumably the fire extinguishers are health and safety and health.
No, they work, I think. But these discs of mine, I'm by the fire extinguishers because they became confused visually in the whole thing. So no one puts an artwork by the fire exit sign normally, or by the floor, or by a plug socket. You always put an artwork on, the 150cm lines on it. So again, by placing them like that, by painting them white, it immediately presumes, and this is the theme of next door as well, it immediately presumes that you're not supposed to look at it because it's white, and you're in a white space, and art galleries are traditionally white, well, traditionally, recently. So you're not supposed to be looking at it. But this one's got bare wires sticking out. Again, health and safety nightmare is playing on that. But bits of cable. And when you look very carefully inside this one, it's got an irregular flashing light, which is imitating a sort of short circuit, like an electric sort of thing. And a friend of mine spent a lot of time and trouble creating a little circuit that would make the light flash irregularly, and I owe him a large crate of wire for doing that for me. But it was so important to me that the light flashed irregularly, and it took me quite a lot of trouble. So that's pretending to be short-circuiting. And that's just its friend, and it sits alongside it and sort of gives some sort of credence to that, really. So that's that corner, really.